And
There
we're
we go.
live.
Looks like we're
We're
live.
live. Woohoo!
Yep. By the way, favorite episode with Grogu in it. Do you have one?
All of them.
All
All
of
of them.
them?
Look at this. Look at this. This is a Grogu that is handmade by an old lady who watched my TV show in the Netherlands.
Oh, really?
And this was before there was any merchandise because when they premiered Grogu,
Hmm.
nobody knew. This
Really?
was even kept a secret for all the actors. This is the prop master who I interviewed on Saturday told me that. So they didn't want merchandise because that would leak out, and it was supposed to be this big reveal at the end of the first Mandalorian episode. And
Okay.
so for a year there was no merchandise, but I had found a pattern for this. But of course, I can't make this.
Right, right.
And I think I talked about it on Facebook, and then this old lady contacts me and says, I can make that for you. Just sent me the thing. And a week later, I get this beautiful Yoda. It's of our Yoda, baby Yoda, Grogu. We didn't know
Right, right.
it's called Grogu. But
Hmm.
anyway, so yeah, I love this little fellow.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting his own huge movie, isn't he?
Yes, yes. It's going to be awesome. It's
Okay.
already in post production, so that's next year.
Amazing.
Yeah. So for the people that are watching, maybe we should introduce ourselves
Well,
for a
let's
minute
do it.
because
So
they don't
we've
know why they're watching this.
Hi, Adventure and Matthew Green. It's nice to see you. I am Dominic, founder of Legend Fiction, the writing community, and we're joined by the Death Star chaplain, Father Roderick. Father,
Yep.
good to see you.
Likewise. And
I'd
this is
say
our
welcome
very
to the
first
show, but I was
live
gonna,
stream.
yeah,
Yeah, it's our show. We don't even know
yeah,
what it's
it's.
called,
I'd say welcome to
but
the show, but that sounds like we have a plan. We don't. We figured, let's just test this thing and see where this goes
yeah,
because you
we got the
just
Catholic
finished.
adventurer there. It's fun to see people that we already know show up and join
Mhm.
us.
Agreed. Good to see you. Hey, take a minute and tell us about the fact that you were on stage with actors from the Star Wars series and movies just this
Oh, that
past
was
weekend.
That was insane. Now, obviously, I've always been into Star Wars. I was a Jedi Knight long before I was ordained a priest. The two vocations are very compatible. And
Sure.
so, was it 2 years ago? I was approached by the organizers of a big charity convention in the Netherlands, where
Hmm.
they usually have a lot of Star Wars actors. But the money they raise with the tickets, it goes to children with cancer. And so thought it was amazing. But they contacted me asking me if I could lead a panel on stage, and I was super intimidated because I was going to interview, among others, the original actress who plays Mon Mothma in
Wow.
what is it, Return of the Jedi, um, as well as the actor, the uncle of Ewan McGregor, who plays Wedge Antilles.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I was so intimidated, and I didn't sleep for an entire night. I had over prepared. I had like, I don't know, 20 pages of questions, but it went so well. It was so much fun to do. And so they asked me back, but this time to host the entire day. So I was on the main stage of a big theater in Amsterdam,
Wow.
and I had three panels and one like fan panel where I was supposed to talk. And I had the time of my life. So I interviewed the prop master. So he's the guy actually who makes Grogu work. And as well as all the lightsaber hilts and everything. Fantastic guy. Then I had a panel with two actors. One very small role, an actress who was disguised as one of the bounty hunters in Empire Strikes Back. It's the
Oh,
first
wow.
appearance of Boba Fett, and she's
Okay.
standing there with a rubber mask on. It's literally 10 seconds on screen. And now, what is it, 45 years later, she's still doing the conventions talking about those 10 seconds. It's insane.
Oh, she's immortalized now. Yeah.
But there was also Julian Glover, who plays General Veers in Empire Strikes Back. But not just that, he's also the evil guy in Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, who drinks the wrong cup.
Hmm.
That's the same actor. And he's in Game of Thrones. He's the guy with
Great.
the kind of the monk-like guy with a white beard, this very old guy. And he's been in like, I don't know, 3 seasons or something.
You're right.
Um,
Wow.
Fantastic. And then I interviewed Diana DiSanto, who plays, oh, I forget her name. in Ahsoka, she plays the nemesis of Ahsoka. Um,
Oh, is it
it's this
the
witch of Dathomir.
okay?
Wonderful lady, and so that's basically how I ended up spending my entire
Didn't you say she
Saturday.
has like a Philippine grandmother?
Yeah, yeah, that was the first thing she said. It's like, Father, I'm so happy that you're interviewing me because my uncle is a priest, and it's so wonderful to see that you're here. And to me, it's still kind of unreal that
Mhm.
I am hosting a big Star Wars convention as a priest, as a Catholic priest, and
Yeah.
nobody seems to be bothered. I did get a few questions asking me if this was cosplay. So no, no, I'm really, I am your father.
That's great. How did the audience react to that one?
Yeah, it's kind of my go-to line whenever I have to
Yeah,
kind of introduce myself. No, but
that's actually, as
I
a side
think
note, that's got to be funny in a like. Isn't you said you're in Netherlands? What was the country?
yeah, the Netherlands, yes.
And they're mostly Protestant, right? How do they handle you saying stuff like, "I am your father"?
Yeah, no, I mean the people that are there are all Star Wars fans like me, and since it's a
Yeah,
charity event, you don't get the toxic fandom. You get just the fans like me, like we all love Star Wars, and just give us more.
yeah,
And of course, for me, it's always it's fun, and in that respect, it's very similar to what we do on Substack. It's all about telling stories and helping people tell their stories. So for me as a host, my challenge was to put these interviewees at ease, even though they're usually seasoned, uh, hosts or guests at events like this. But for instance, the prop master, he'd never been in front of an audience. He
oh
was
no.
so nervous. And so for me, it was the challenge. Like, can I put him on? And the trick is let them tell their stories.
Mhm.
So you do a little bit of research, and then you're like, "Can you tell me about that one time that Chopper broke? He made a real life-size version of Chopper from Star Wars Rebels,
Okay.
and then what happens, and how do you solve that?" And then the story started to flow, and I just had to press a button every 10 minutes, and then a new story would come out. It's like that's the
Wow,
magic of storytelling. And
that's
I was
brilliant.
sitting on the edge of my seat, just listening, taking it all in, and thinking, you know what? Can I can I write that? Can I write something about that on my Substack?
Well, speaking of storytelling, I mean, you're telling a story now every day on your
Yeah.
Substack. You've been doing this for how long now?
Um, I started, I think this is day 16 or day 17. I created the Substack account maybe last year, I think, because I heard about it. But I was following just a few pious people, like very, academic Dominicans talking about the Vatican Council and whatnot. I had no idea that Substack was such a fun place to be at. And then it's because you and I think we're talking about legend fiction, and it just I like in the back of my mind is like I need to start right because I started
Yeah.
to write a fantasy novel at the beginning of this year, but I just I didn't have the experience of telling stories, and so it was much more painful than I expected. And then I think it was because you and I talked, and I was like, well, why don't I just start a Substack? And you said, yeah, yeah, do that. Substack, great. I am on Substack too. I have like 6 Substacks. It was like, okay, probably I need to be
Well, I'm
there.
nuts. Yeah.
And so, and then looking at it, I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to talk about writing. No, well, you know what? I'm just going to write a story. I'm going to post it here. Not really because I think anyone is going to read those stories, but for me, it's a way to hold myself publicly accountable. So at least every morning I have something to write, namely a short story. And
Yeah.
that took off. And it's as if the dam broke
And
and I
you
can't
just they're like
stop anymore.
cozy and they're epic. And I think you say you go and you take a walk every day and
Yeah.
you record them while you're walking. You come back afterwards and type them up, and it's just yeah, the dam
Yeah. I
broke.
just
And
have them transcribed and then I let it rest, marinate, sometimes for a day, sometimes even for a week. And then like every morning, I basically already have the story. And then it's a matter of just like rewriting it as a short story and creating a picture. And it was also for me just a way to try out genres. What is my voice? I don't know. I've never written fantasy before, so I started with the epic stuff like magic. I wanted to kind of tie into the novel that I'm writing or the world that I'm creating, but I don't even know that world very well. So I was like, okay, well, just tell small stories about a novice and about a hunter that gets lost in the woods. And soon I was like, okay, well, every story is about like evil people using magic, and then a good guy solves it. It got boring. So what else can I do? Well, yeah, I like cozy stories from. So I wrote a story about a magical tavern that appears for any pilgrim who is tired, and then the tavern is run by angels, and they heal by making delicious hot chocolate and like heavenly pastry. And like, okay,
Wow.
I love writing that. So then it gave me more ideas. I can write that story. And there was one last thing. Substack for me is wish fulfillment. Ever
How do you
since
mean?
I was 8 years old, I wanted to become a children's book writer because I
Oh,
lived
really?
in the library. I I I must have read a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory more than 100 times. I
me,
read it
me
every
too.
week.
Yeah.
Um, and I dreamt of, one day I will be a children's book writer because most of the books that I was reading as or tried to read were boring. They're all about kids like me with problems and divorced parents and existential doubts. And it's like I discovered Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and what is it, the wizard,
Ursula Le
we're off to
Guin.
see the wizard.
Oh, oh gosh, Frank
The Wizard
Baum,
of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
And I was like, why don't people write children's book like that? Everybody would read those books. And so I vowed to myself, one day I will be a children's book writer, and will write like Roald Dahl. I will write like C.S. Lewis, like Tolkien. And now, ever since I started Substack, I'm thinking, you know what? I will. And so I started to write also children's stories. And I kind of mix them in because it's not the same audience, obviously. But I'm thinking, a lot of my readers might have children. And so I started to write, um, and that's kind of the marketeer in me. I was like, what will people want to read? Well, when I started, the conclave was going on, and every camera was filming those seagulls on the roof of the chapel, and I heard like BBC journalists going on and on and on about those seagulls, and my brain was like, I need to tell the story of those seagulls, especially because there was a little chick. I was like, oh, that's a story. I didn't know what story, so I wrote a story, and
Mhm.
that went viral or kind of semi-viral. I got like thousands of views on it. I even got contacted by a journalist from the New York Times.
Wait,
And she's like,
really?
I love your story. We need to write an article about it. And so she sent me some questions. I wrote her back. And then I didn't get the call back. Why? Because white smoke, new pope. Yeah, sorry, our plans have changed. But it just showed me the potential of Substack.
Oh, that's incredible.
And that's kind of how I got going. And I don't know how to stop anymore. Please help.
Blink if you need help. So you're writing this massive novel, right? Or maybe it's massive. I don't know. 60 days in, it's like story mages, or are you just focusing on the short stories right now?
I'm I'm I am reworking the outline, which is probably beginner mistake number one.
Okay.
I tried to do everything according to the rules. I watched hundreds of YouTube tutorials on how to write fantasy. And it was a lot of fun. I learned so much. And so I started as a discovery writer, and then immediately I knew this is not going to work. I need a plan because I don't even know what kind of story I'm telling. So I'm maybe just working for naught because I will have to revise everything. So I started to work out an outline, which was exhilarating. And I found this scheme, or no, this how do you say that? The schematics, or like a 40 chapter outline that was based on the hero's journey, the save
Wow.
the cat. And
Okay.
it's this guy who does a lot of like AI. He has a whole YouTube channel about writing fantasy with AI. That's kind of how I found him.
Mhm.
And one of his giveaways was basically this. Let me just give you 40 chapters because I work a lot with new writers. They have no idea how to write a balanced book. And I was like, that's what I need, just a recipe. And then I
Nice.
just fill in every chapter, and then I'll have my outline. So I started doing that, and then I realized when I started to write short stories where I can take my time to tell very little things. It's like today I wrote a story um, about a boy who was in a monastery, and his mother, when he entered the monastery, gave him a chicken feather as a quill. And she's like, okay, you go write beautiful stories. And that's what he does. But then, it's a chicken feather. So it breaks all the time, and it gets blotchy. And then there's this other boy, and he's got this nice like goose feather. And he's like, oh, I need one of those. And he goes to see the uncle who has geese on his farm. And he asks you, can I have so he gets the goose feather, and he wants to go back to the monastery, and then he hears a strange bird, and he looks and he sees this amazing green magical bird, and he's like, oh, I need that feather. And then he goes after the bird, and then he gets lost in the woods, and then he's like, where's that bird? I need that feather. That feather is going to help me to write the most beautiful stuff. And then he comes across, he finds an angel, and the green birds are nesting at the feet of the angel. There are a lot of angels in my story. I don't know why. Um, and then he sees that the angel has amazing feathers, and then the angel is like, "Would you like to have one?" He said, "Yeah." So he gets the feather from the angel, and then he's lost. The angel disappears. He doesn't know how to get back home. So the feather floats in the air and goes ahead of him, glows in the dark, and he's like, okay, I need to follow this feather. And then he comes across this dark creature. I imagined kind of a Balrog, like dark and leathery, wings and whatnot, and that dark creature is like, okay, what do you want? And he said, well, I need to go home. And then this creature says, well, no, I don't ask what you need. I ask what you want. And then he's like, oh, I want to be the best writer in the world. I want to write the most beautiful stories. I want to be able to create the most beautiful artwork. And then, of course, there's a price to pay for that. It's like, okay, I can fix that. I can help you. There's only one little thing that I need of you. Give me that angel's feather, which he does. And then he gets this dark, weighty feather and returns to the monastery. Sorry, I'm spoiling the whole story here, but I'm like there right now.
Right.
This is how it works. I start telling a story, and then I just lose track of time and space. And
Mhm.
uh, so he turns to the monastery, and he wants to go show his new feather, and all the doors are closed. He can't get into the chapel. And there's only one door that is open, and that is the door of the scriptorium. And there's his table, and there's his chair, there's a candle, there's parchment waiting for him. He sits down, and he starts to write. And oh my goodness, the stories are amazing. The artwork, it's flowing, it doesn't stop. And that becomes the problem. He can't stop. And so you see, I'm
Gosh.
writing my own story here. He just
Yeah.
continues to write and write and write. Dawn never arrives. Hundreds of years later, he's still writing there. And then there's this old monk who now lives in, he's, the scriptorium is just rooms left, and it's empty. There's a new monastery next door, and there's this old monk who can't sleep, who used to write stories, but he starts to forget. His hands are trembling, and then he because he's an insomniac. He goes to the rooms and just walk around outside, and then he sees the little table, and he sees the boy write, and he sees an angel who stands next to the boy, and um, and he feels a question in his heart, and the question is, what do you want? And he sees the boy, and he sees the grace of the letters, and he's like, oh, if I get that quill, my strength will return, my memory will work again. I will be able to write just like in when I was young and energetic. And then for a moment he's tempted, and then he feels the hand of the angel on his shoulder. And he's like, no. And then he bends over and looks at, what is the boy writing? And the boy is writing the same phrase every time, but never finishes it. And every time he writes, it's like, I want to, I want to, I want to. And then here's the twist. The old man reaches in his pocket, and he has this old chicken feather quill, and he finishes the sentence, "I want to," and then he writes in trembling hands, "Let go." And the boy disappears, the angel disappears. There's a bird singing. It's a green bird. It's a magical bird, and the sun rises over the monastery. At the
Oh my
end.
gosh.
That's the story. So
Chills.
it's and I'm writing that, and it's by writing stories like that that I'm discovering that it's actually not a bad idea to take the time not to write action or events or but to write, I don't know how to say this. It feels more like I'm writing feelings or I don't know. Just it's I don't know where it comes from, but I feel that this is my style.
Mhm.
And so I'm going back to my outline now, and I'm thinking, you know what? That outline. If I want to write like the story I just told you, the outline is 3 books, if not more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just Act One. That's going to be my first novel. I'm going to take my time to write it in this style with much more like room to breathe and more exploration of emotions and memories and whatnot. So anyway, why
Yeah,
am I
I've
telling all
noticed.
this?
I've noticed that exact same thing. Well, let me come back to that. Have you seen the series Evil?
No.
Gosh, who produced it? I can't remember. I don't know. But it's this phenomenal show. It's got there's a Catholic priest in it, and it's got a former Catholic psychotherapist, psychologist, and then there's the Muslim guy who's in tech. And the three of them are
Uh-huh.
detailed by the Archdiocese of New York to go out and investigate situations of potential exorcism. And
Nice. It's
it's
like
this
X
whole
Files with priests.
yes, it's
Nice.
exactly that. Hilarious, dark comedy. I'm smart, so I watch it in daytime. I can't watch it at night. And there's one sort of little storyline where a psychologist who thinks he's so smart ends up selling his soul for a minute, and to do this exact same thing, to write this novel. He's been dreaming of writing the novel, and then he
Cool.
goes and he does this stupid thing, and then the novel just pours out of him, and it's like he's ecstatic, and it's just pouring out. And then somebody else comes and has a look later at what he's writing, right? And there's music and orchestral fanfare when he's typing, and the other person goes and looks, and it's garbage and garbled
Ah.
just letters on the page. It's like nothing, you know. Um,
Awesome.
gosh.
It sounds almost like Stephen King.
Well, I love this series. Like, it's actually one of the few shows that actually gets Catholicism mostly right, kind of like Daredevil, the Netflix
Nice.
series.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Got
exactly.
Catholicism like mostly right. It's like I'm proud this actually exists. Is out here? I think it's actually made by a couple of Catholics or former Catholics. So um, anyhow, your point about crafting stories. I have there's like a novel that I've procrastinated or just avoided writing. It's about
Hmm.
dragon riders that I've wanted to write for like 15 years and I never did. And so we put together an anthology beginning of
Yeah.
this year
Hmm.
in the legend fiction community, and we called it There Be Dragons. And basically, the only rule was you had to have something related to dragons in your story. And so I
Hmm.
thought, well, what if I just wrote the opening chapter of this novel I will never write, and let me just go
Yeah.
and write it out after 15 years. I didn't actually include a dragon in it. The whole point of the story was leading towards the dragon. But what
Nice.
happened was there was a little bit of action in it, but mostly it was who is this character, the backstory, the motivation, and I'd never done the kind of exercise like what you're talking about, like
Mm.
um, really focus on identifying a very compelling character and giving them that motivation, and then writing towards like a 5-page end, and then it's done.
Mm.
After doing that, like as a writing exercise, got to the end, and I was like, my goodness, I have never understood my main character the way that I do now. And so then,
Right. Right.
like a quarter later, we just finished our well, we're wrapping up another contest right now on King Arthur. But we have before this we did the cozy what do we call it? Cozy Cafe Chronicles, and
Yeah.
it was a oh, no Cocoa Cafe Chronicles.
Coco.
We did
Yes.
yeah, and the theme was again a simple challenge. Everybody you have to have a cocoa cafe in a harbor, and you inherited it, and something has to go badly wrong. And
Nice.
uh, for that one, it's like also did the same sort of thing. Let's try writing a short story. What if a character tries to sell off his cafe because he has
Mhm.
debts and he wants to get out of town. But what if the guy that he goes to sell it to is from the cocoa mafia and sees there's a spark in this kid? There's a devil may care ability to sell stuff.
Mm.
So this guy from the cocoa mafia breaks his knee and forces him to stay in the cafe. And if he steps out, he will be killed. And he now has 2 weeks to
All
get
right.
this dead cafe back up and running so that
Uh-huh.
this guy can flush cocoa beans through this cafe and start
Yeah.
making a lot of money. And I thought this would be such a fun novel to write,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I'd ever write the thing. So let me just write just the opening scene that captured my
There you
attention.
go. Yeah.
And I just wrote that. And by the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, I understand the main character. I might actually write the rest of this thing, but it's such a phenomenal way to give a vignette of where the story can go that only focuses on the character. Um,
Mhm.
and it's funny because writing short stories, it's a hard thing to do. We have a lot of authors in our community who are crafting short stories. They're submitting them every quarter. We're putting out a new anthology, and it's
Mhm.
a way to publish authors. And
Sure.
but what a lot of authors are not figuring out, the point of a short story is to like strip away like everything,
Yes.
almost
Yeah.
strip away the action, strip away all of the
True.
extraneous details. It's a character who wants something and then does something to get it. You know, the core essentials of
Yeah, there are a
a
few
story.
rules to it. It's
Yeah,
basically not more than two or three people in it, not too many names if possible,
probably
and
not even too
condense
many
your writing.
scenes.
Say as much as you can with as few words as you can. That is for me the big change from writing the novel, where I would just go and write long sentences and paragraphs, and now it's like, yeah, no, I don't have that room. But it really helps to write better because then you're starting to think, okay, so how can I evoke something with a few words instead of describing it?
Mhm,
And that has really helped to write. Um, I don't know if that's a term, but more evocative prose,
mhm.
where it's more about feelings and smells and sounds and while I'm doing this, every story gets better, and I start to understand what it means to show, not tell.
Yeah,
And so I'm thinking, I'm so glad that I started this Substack adventure because in 2 weeks, I think I've learned more about writing and storytelling than I've learned in my entire life before.
yeah,
So highly
through the
recommend that
actual
people do
craft.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
And tell me about the relaunch of Legend Fiction because that's something that you've been working on for quite a while now. We also talked about quite a bit. How can we make Legend Fiction as a community as open as possible without losing
yeah,
the kind of what makes legend fiction so special and so unique and without selling our soul basically.
yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that process.
Well, so I have you to credit for a lot of the conversations you and I've had over the last 2 months. So
Mhm.
uh, just watching how you're interacting with people who love what we love, because you're a Catholic priest, you're walking around all of these Comic Con, what are conventions, and
Mhm.
celebrations, stuff like that, and everybody's in love with fandoms and pop culture, and we
Yeah.
are too in love with fandoms and pop culture. The what you Our conversations have kind of sort of brought me full circle with the realization that years and years ago, I think it was after watching Batman Begins and
Mhm.
Inception, okay, by like Christopher Nolan. I remember thinking, where are the Catholic blockbusters?
Mhm.
And like you said earlier, like all of these stories as kids, I grew up reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and every conceivable mythology that there is from every culture around the world. Um, and then getting older, and then the books become progressively more boring. It's almost like there's a conspiracy to kill off a love of fiction out there. Um, I won't go to the wall on that one, but it kind of feels like it sometimes.
Mhm.
So I thought, why aren't anybody writing kind of massive epic stories? And so, okay, I'm going to do that. And so I started outlining the kinds of novels that I would want to read. And then I grew up and I got married and I got a job, and then I just didn't do anything. And so I started Legend Fiction as a community 3, 4 years ago now. No, gosh, maybe five. I can't remember. This is awful. 4 years at least.
Mhm.
Where I thought, what if we just bring people together because we love writing? And then simply by being around other people who are writing, kind of like your own experience, as you said a little earlier today, just by being around other people, all of a sudden the love for writing just like came back out of nowhere. All of a sudden it was easier, not totally easy, but easier to just
Mhm.
start writing the stories. It's like, if you
Yeah.
want to do something you love, go and hang around people who are doing that. And then we start inspiring and, sharing each other. Um, it's so now
By the
been
way,
four
can I
years.
interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go
Because you
ahead.
say something super important, and that's I think the strength of and also why legend fiction is has so much potential. It we know this, uh, but we sometimes forget about it. But if you have ideals, if you have targets that you would one day realize, or dreams you would like to realize, surround yourself with people who are already doing that. And that's the strength of community. You're surrounding yourself with people who either are on the same level as you or maybe ahead of you, and that's how you learn. It's and now with this online community, that's within reach of everyone.
Yep, I agree.
Anyway,
And
sorry, I
thank
was
you.
interrupting you, but
No, no, you're great. It's all good. I had somebody, one of our community members, read the sort of relaunch notes that I just posted the other day, and they said this is cool because I can see all of this is what you were trying to accomplish day one when you launched this thing. It's just taken 3 years to get the clarity instead of just using labels to identify the kind of people you want to reach. Now we're trying to get into what are the actual things that we share about how we go about living in the world. And so we boiled it down to like four, technically three things, but I'll always throw a fourth in. Meaning, we are in a crisis of meaning right now. When you
yes.
don't have meaning in your life, everything falls apart.
Hmm.
Um, and life is already hard. And you
Hmm.
take away the possibility of meaning, it becomes insanely hard, if not just too impossible to even stay in. So it's a crisis right now. We've got to put the meaning back or rediscover it or allow people to make it up until they figure out why they're actually here. Because you and I both deeply believe everybody's here with a plan and a purpose. It's just a matter of figuring out what is the right one. And so we've got to bring back meaning. And then there's moral imagination, which is how you live out that meaning. If you
Hmm.
recognize there's a good thing, it is good to be here, then we have to contribute towards human thriving, eliminate suffering, and do good, that sort of thing. That's called moral living, trying to avoid, do good, avoid evil, that sort of thing. And then the last thing is mythic truth, or even just the mythic mindset, the sense that we don't just make up anything we want. Half the time, we are recipients of truth as we're discovering. We're finding there are things that are much greater than us, that are older than us, things like archetypes and gods and angels that want to communicate and speak and share and work through us. We're carrying on a torch from previous generations into the future. And that's the whole point, is we need to build a future we can believe in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't go anywhere. You don't do anything. You're not pulled towards something. So that's the kind of fiction in our community that we all love, and we're having a whole lot of fun trying to write. And quite frankly, it's also the kind of fiction that gets turned into movies that I think really have the staying power that endure. Um, the movies that really are doing, I think, really do well, like in Marvel and Disney and Hollywood, apart from the flash and the pans, that are just like edgy and cool for a minute, the ones that really endure, like Star Wars, have something very deep and very real to share about what it means to be human and to be alive. And if you've understood everything wrong and you don't know it, who are you and how do you deal with that? So we decided, okay, everybody is doubling down in the culture. If they're trying to like good fiction, they're like going no spice, squeaky clean. We're writing for this specific community, and come and buy us if you want clean, safe fiction and stuff.
Hmm.
And it's been obvious to me. I don't want to create another bookshelf in another Barnes and Noble. It's like here's the pop fiction, here's Christian
Yeah.
fiction, and I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
that. I want our
No.
fiction to be so good that it's in the pop fiction with everybody else, but
Right.
it's getting what we think without being preachy. It's what we think about how to create really epic, cool, awesome characters that are struggling because they are human, and we can create fantastic worlds. Um, so the last M that I'll include is magic, and that's where it's like Jedi, demigods, hobbits, fawns, whatever, because it's all fun. And so even though writing is a
Yeah.
vocation, can be a vocation, it's also a metric ton of fun. And
Absolutely.
that's what inspires me about legend fiction.
And I was thinking about magic the other day while I was writing a short story. I was like, okay, well, why do I feel that as a priest I always have to apologize for telling stories with magic in it?
Excellent.
when one of the first stories in the gospel is the story of magi visiting Jesus. Okay, I'm going to write that story. So I wrote a an imaginary tale of those magi, and how they end up uh, in Bethlehem. Um, but I was also thinking, what is magic in storytelling? Magic is not nothing more than our deep desire, which I think is God given, to transform the world. Magic is always transformative. This is a spoon.
Tell you what,
I
Father,
use
everybody who's
magic.
watching right now, everyone who's watching right now, we've got about 15 people sitting. This is amazing. Hi, everybody. It
Yeah.
is wonderful to see you. Um, Drop in the comments how you would define why magic is valuable. I'm going to ask Father to keep going in just a second here, but I would
Sure.
frankly love to know what you think, and we'll sort of maybe riff on that. So hold your answer, Father. Um, I'm actually gonna have to think about like my answer, but I think you're absolutely right. I think it does come down to a desire to have more influence and impact in the world. So
And
we'll give people a
to
sec.
be
Yeah, keep
able
going.
to wield that power, because we feel oftentimes, and I think especially now in this day and age, I think most people feel super overwhelmed by everything that's going wrong in the world. And so I wouldn't be surprised if magic, and especially kind of the cozy, value-driven magic, fantasy, that those stories will flourish, because we all desire the ability to change the world for the better.
Right.
And that's it's interesting. I did some research on trends, and it turns out that there was this very short popularity of like the grimdark stuff. It's
Mm,
very dark and lots of, like, I don't know, Dracula. I never read anything in grimdark, so I probably don't. But apparently that's dwindling very fast, and people are now all turning towards cozy fantasy and stories with a good vibe, and thinking, yeah, duh, we all,
mm.
there's enough misery in the world. We don't want to see that on our screen. So there is the desire to change and transform reality, even if we can only do it in our imagination. That is something that we need, because it gives us hope that maybe we can do that in real life as well.
I think so. I think so
What are
too.
people writing? I see some stuff, but I can only see the last comment.
I don't, because I'm still brand new to live streaming on sub. Oh, here we go. There's
Oh, you can
Paul
actually
Renier.
move your hand over it, and then you can read all the comments.
There you go. Total Substack noobs here. Paul Renier says the reality that there is supernatural power beyond the natural. I think that's true too.
True.
I like that. And you know what's actually kind of funny is the age in which we live. Sometimes, if we were to imagine ourselves as being medieval people again, right, and and then look at the amount of technology that we have. So spooky action at a distance, right? And even though that's like quantum stuff, like we're able to be in a palantir right now,
Yep.
using the power of the stars, the electrical blood energy of
Mhm.
of the galaxy, which we have harnessed to be able to compress sand and silica into glass, and then wield gold and whatever goes into creating a phone, um, so that we can create this little window that warps space and time so that we're able to have a conversation right now. I mean, there is a level at which there is a level of practical magic that as a
True.
human family we have mastered that is pretty staggering to think about. And because it's become so normalized, I'm fascinated by prehistory cultures. I think actually it was you and I talking about earlier about anthropology. Who was I talking to? Maybe it was you. I don't remember. Anyhow, I'm fascinated with anthropology, stuff like that, and how in the past a shaman, for example, would enter into a trance and then project his spirit into a bird and then send the bird out, and so there would be like a communion with that bird, an act of
Hmm.
magic. You can argue whether that's good or bad immaterial right now, and he would sort of fly through the eyes of the bird and explore the world and something like that. Well, today we have a drone that does that for it. And I want to be
Mhm.
careful about the word just, because what we have actually done is we've compelled rock and steel and plastic and bend it to our will, and then we send that up, and then we put on a headset that allows us to then see through its eyes. It's the same weird and fascinating concept. Like TV is the ability for us to share a dream
Yeah.
that, that we think of or that we can imagine with somebody else. Matthew's
But the
added
thing
multiple
is,
comments. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We live in a magical world, and we have
Mhm.
such, if you would show someone from the Middle Ages the world as it is right now, they would think it's magic. But what we don't have, or what we have lost, and that is why I think your project with legend fiction is so important, what we've lost is the narrative. We don't even realize the
Yeah.
wondrous gifts that we've been given, let alone that we realize that we are part of a story, and we are the ones who need to give this a good ending. And we should use these tools not just to entertain ourselves, or even worse, use it for to destroy, or to I don't know, create division. But we are responsible to wield that magic in a way that makes the world, or that heals the world, and that is, I think, what stories teach us. They show us our world in a mirror, so that we can figure out in the story what we should do, so that then we can apply it, or at least we get incentivized to do that in real life as well.
I think a lot of storytelling is, I mean, imagination is a way to field test yourself in
Yeah,
situations you'll never live in. But then also sometimes a story is a way for you to get somebody else's experience into you very quickly,
very
and
true.
to now be able to live in a time where you have book talk and book bub and then artist colonies used to be very hard to get to. Um, Now they're like a click away. You can just pick the right one you want to join, and so it's a matter of finding the right one. And I think that's where we have a challenge right now, where there's creativity. Um, how do you say this? It's like creativity without consequences, I think, is a problem, or creativity without purpose. I think we love the idea as creatives, which is creativity with that's just limitless. I'm not bound by anybody. I can do whatever I want. And that's true. You probably can, and nobody can stop you. But if you do have a purpose, and sometimes you have to read a metric ton of stories to start to figure out what is your purpose.
Yeah.
And I think,
No, it requires discernment, and
yeah,
that's one of the things that you need other people for, to sometimes tell you, hey, I think this is really your thing, this is your voice, this is your message, do more. Sometimes we don't even realize that ourselves. That's what I love about Substack and getting feedback from fellow writers, is that they tell you actually what you don't see yourself. It's someone from the outside that says, "Oh, that story or that particular thing, that works for me," and then okay, so that I need to do more of that.
yeah, amazing.
Anyway, there's
Well,
a
we
lot
have
of
gone
stuff.
on.
We can talk for hours, but we shouldn't,
We need to wrap
because
here.
over here in the Netherlands it is past my dinner time, so I need to head into the kitchen and start cooking
Absolutely.
something.
Well, friends, thanks for jumping on and joining us and watching along. There's a little heart button. If everybody could hit that, I'd love to see what happens because I'm going to try it on my end. I think it sends up a little floaty heart,
Oh
which is kind
yeah,
of cool. There you go. I'm going to hit that two
nice. I
times.
do
That's,
that
that's kind of
too.
fun. There you
Oh,
go.
cool. Yeah.
So, 30 seconds, Father. Last thought that you want to leave with people. Um, yeah, kicking off this little conversation. Anything you want to tease off that's going to be coming soon from you, or just something you're working on?
Oh boy, I have so much that I'm working on. Well, actually, I told you before we started this, that I'm with these stories. I'm creating so much volume that I'm actually already composing two books. I'm writing a children's book, which is the stories, the children's stories, and then I'm writing a second book, which is a cozy fantasy tale about two angels that run a tavern that only appears when pilgrims are tired and need some help, and then they open the door and you get this heavenly cocoa and nice treats and everything, and the angels are there and they just listen to your stories, and then they write them down, and what they wrote down, that's going to be the story. I'm already past the halfway point, which is kind of insane after just 16 days. And I post a story every day, but I create two or three stories every day. So I think I'm almost there. So
Wow,
I'm looking
amazing.
forward to, but I hope, and I definitely need your experience and your help for, to make that a reality. But I so wish that I could put at least the fantasy book up on Amazon, and just get my first fantasy book out there. I mean, how cool would that be?
That's exciting. Very exciting. Oh,
Anyway.
awesome. So that's your update, and then on our end, if you're friends, if you haven't yet seen it, we have it's like a mini relaunch of our community where we just double down on more about who we're about and what we're doing. Uh, we're a fiction writing community focusing on meaning and moral imagination, and then the mythic sense, plus magic because magic is just dope and fun. But it's actually conversations like this one with Father, and the fact there are so many authors out there, and there are so many readers out there who love this kind of thing. Like Paul Renier says, I want to go to that coffee shop. Heck, I want to go to that coffee shop too. I had a joke on Facebook years back where when I get to heaven, I'm starting a coffee shop, and so whoever's in, tag me and I'll slip you an invite. But because of these kinds of conversations, we've decided that our writing community needs to start our own magazine. This is the first announcement that's now being made
Yeah.
about this. We're going to launch it very, very soon, probably come back next week and talk more. But we have had an online convention every year for the last 4 years. I can't count, 4 years. Um, well, this is now the fourth, Legend Haven, and it's a place where all of the authors and all of the writers can get together. What did I say? Readers and all of the writers can get together and hang out and meet each other and discover new indie authors and all of the things that the authors are working on. So what we've decided is, okay, we're going to turn this into a quarterly magazine. We're going to feature authors and new stories and things like writing tips and book recommendations, movie recommendations, and so on. And I specifically want to thank you, Father, a month and a half ago, really pushing me to think hard about the fact that there are a ton of readers out there who would love to know what's worth reading out there and who is worth
Oh yeah.
knowing.
Curation is so important.
Hmm. So that's
Uh,
what we're doubling down on. And this is
and
we're
it looks
challenging our
amazing. I
writing
mean, you
community.
showed me some like early versions, and oh my
Mhm.
goodness, I why doesn't this exist? I think it's going to be a huge success.
We
Having
yeah.
like a legend fiction magazine that you can actually order, and it's color and it's beautiful, and you just
Full of stories and yeah.
in 5 years time I will have like an entire row here behind me, and it's just going to be all these magazines. Imagine that.
Uh,
It's going to be awesome.
I think there's a ton of people who are gonna love it. All right, we got to wrap, friends. If this was interesting or helpful, please
Yep.
say hi in the comments. Drop your questions. Father and I are thinking about maybe coming back and doing this next week, maybe
Yep.
each week after that, as long as things hold and there aren't any new Death Stars. But if you have questions or thoughts or recommendations or arguments or whatever, go ahead, let us know in the comments. Hit the heart. That's how it's going to let Substack know that it can spread this to find more people who are just like you and I and Father, loving the kind of things that we love and want to continue this conversation. So have a magical rest of your Wednesday. God bless you, and we will see you all soon.
Yep. May the force be with you.
May the Lord be with you.